Welcome to Safety at Home. This is a community dementia education program of Alzheimer San Diego. We're really glad that you could join us this afternoon from wherever you have tuned in from. My name is Amy, and I'm the Director of Education here at Alzheimer San Diego. Pleased, as always, to be joined by my colleague here in the Education Department, Jean.
Hi, everybody.
Jean and I will be co-presenting this program here today with support from our colleague, Gabby. Hi, Gabby.
Hi, everyone.
So Gabby is a member of our clinical services team. She's one of our clinical care coaches who provides one-on-one support to families who call us, who reach out for information and resources and support. Let's talk about what we are going to be covering in our agenda today. We'll start by reviewing the physical and cognitive symptoms of Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. Specifically, we're going to focus on how they impact a person's ability to stay safe. So this is not a program that is about dementia. It's more, the causes, the pathology, the treatment, the diagnosis. We're focusing on the symptoms today, specifically how the symptoms affect safety awareness and the ability to respond when one is in an unsafe situation. So we'll keep the dementia discussion pretty focused there, but do know that we have many other education programs and resources available on our website and in our webinar library if you want to know, if you need to know more about the conditions themselves. We'll then get into the safety stuff, ways to reduce the risk of the most common safety concerns for people who are living with dementia and their care partners. So those are primarily falls, household injuries, medication errors, the risk of abuse, as well as things like driving, firearms, wandering, get the risk of becoming lost. Then we will wrap up by talking about the resources that are out there, both within our organization, but also available through several key community resources, other local nonprofits here in San Diego to help you sort of put together your safety plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jean. Thanks, Jean.
Sounds good. Thank you, Amy. So yes, we'll start with the physical and cognitive symptoms of dementia. And again, that very brief description of dementia so that we are understanding that what is going on in the brain, the progression of the disease, the dementia itself is affecting the brain and how it's functioning. And this in turn is then affecting physical functioning and how we, cognition, how we're able to think and make decisions. So let's see here. So what is dementia? Well, it's a syndrome that is describing a group of symptoms that's caused by something that's going on medically, some underlying medical condition. And this condition is affecting the cognition of the person. It's causing behavior change, and it's interfering with normal daily activities. We'll go into a little bit more detail in a bit here, not about what is dementia, but again, how functioning is being impacted cognitively, behaviorally, and physically. So, but ultimately, what is happening is that all this damage that is going on is affecting all those things that we use on a day-to-day basis that help us to assess and monitor safety and decision-making. So the disease is impacting that, the judgment and the decision-making. It's obviously impacting memory, sometimes language as well too. And it may be causing people to do things that are out of character. And all of this is then impacting daily life. So, come on. It's important to know that dementia then describes a lot of different medical conditions that cause those symptoms. And Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. And it is a progressive disease. It does result in brain cell death. And in this picture that we see here, this graphic, you'll see on the left side, the healthy brain, and on the right side, the cross section of a brain of a person living with advanced Alzheimer's. And, we can see there's quite a physical difference between those brains. So there is brain cell death going on. So there is atrophy of the brain, as we see here, that it's where it used to be kind of nice and plump and full. It's gotten smaller. It's shrinking. And the communication between those neurons, the brain cells, are being impacted as well too. We talk often in many of our classes about the generalities of symptoms and how the disease progresses. And there are generalities that we are able to bring to your attention and talk about. However, it is also very important to remember that there's still a lot of differences and how symptoms and progression occurs can vary quite widely. So one person might be experiencing progression of the disease that seems like it's moving fairly quickly. In a matter of a few years, they've really declined in terms of their functioning. And for other people, it might be much more slow. So just bear that in mind, that when we talk about some of these things here, there can be some big difference and some real variance between people. However, Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, folks. Now we're going to talk about dementia symptoms in general. So these are the symptoms that we see in Alzheimer's disease, but we may see some of them in other types of dementia, but not necessarily all of them either. So again, keeping that in mind. So memory loss. Well, memory loss is pretty common. And some of you may have direct experience with that, with the person you're caring for, where we see people are having problems completing familiar tasks. It seems that they're forgetting kind of the steps they need to take to, get that task done. And we see that short-term recall where there's that rapid forgetting. And we hear about this a lot from families. This is where you've told a person you're caring for something, and 2 minutes later, 3 minutes, 5 minutes later, they're asking that same question again, that rapid forgetting. And they might ask that same question over and over several times. And that's the short-term memory loss that is going on, that is quite common in dementia. And so how does memory loss translate to safety? How might it impact safety? Well, the area that Amy mentioned already that is ripe for errors and problems, and particularly because of memory loss, is medication errors. So people living with dementia may forget to take medication, or they may forget that they already took it and take it multiple times, or they may take too many, forget that they're only supposed to take one of these prescribed medications a day, and instead are taking 3 or 4 at a time, thinking more maybe is better. And or they may be getting, if there's other people in the household on medications, they may be getting medications mixed up about who is taking what. So medications can be a real area of concern with regards to safety. So we are talking now about changes in judgment, and one of the areas that is an area of real concern, and this kind of thing does occur, and I know all of you will have, I hope you haven't experienced it firsthand, but you will have read about it, where because of poor judgment, a person with dementia might be sending thousands and thousands of dollars to organizations, to charities. Perhaps they were donating to these organizations previous to a diagnosis of dementia, but perhaps now it's gotten into amounts of dollars that really the person can't afford, but they're not able to use good judgment to come to that conclusion and say, well, once a year, I'm going to give $100 to this organization. So we're seeing changes in that kind of judgment, but also impulsivity, where people are making decisions very quickly that are, just really unsafe. And I remember a client I worked with a while back where the mother with dementia was out, the adult child came to find this out kind of after the fact, but the mother with dementia was out in the neighborhood and she was flagging people down. She wanted a ride to the bank. So she was flagging down strangers. And finally she got to the bank and then she wanted to withdraw a large amount of money. Now the bank intervened and everything turned out okay, but you can just imagine for a minute if that stranger happened to be a person who was not a good Samaritan and offered to take her home and then took her money from her. And in this whole scenario, the person living with dementia did not feel there was anything wrong in her decision making. So again, an illustration of how we need to just be aware of that and help to be able to make situations a little bit safer for our folks. Now, I'm having some problems with advancing. Amy, would you maybe be able to advance a slide for me? Thank you. And so then in the area of orientation, we can be seeing problems tracking the passage of time. And this is a very common thing. And so perhaps a care partner has just stepped out maybe to get the mail or to just run to the grocery store, which is 10 minutes down the road, to pick up a loaf of bread, and we'll be right back. And those 10 minutes or 15 minutes that they are gone may seem like hours and hours to the person living with dementia. So problems tracking that passage of time. And this leads to confusion and disorientation. And so I have heard often, and I suspect, well, I know Amy has, and I suspect Gabby has as well too, about family members saying that I came home and the person I'm caring for was really angry with me because he or she felt like I'd been gone for a long, long time and they didn't know where I was. So how does this impact safety? Well, then think that if your person you're caring for thinks you've been gone way too long and they don't know where you are because they don't remember, then maybe they're going to be out in the street looking for you and going door to door saying, well, where's, my wife or my husband or whoever it is, my daughter or my son. So just that whole disorientation and trouble with time can really lead to some safety issues. And next up, we have behavior. And let's just see if I can possibly get my remote working here. It's just not working. Amy, would you mind clicking the slides for me? Thank you. So behavior is changes in mood or personality. So what we're talking about is a change that is different from normal for that person. If a person has been kind of a grumpy person most of their life and they're still grumpy, then that's not a change. That's kind of who they've been. But if the person has been, somebody who's been really nice and pleasant and so forth, and now is angry and upset and agitated a lot of the time, that is a change in mood or personality. It's a change from normal. And it is what I've described. It's often unstable emotions. Although I will say it can sometimes go the other way. I have worked with families that have described their person living with dementia as becoming more pleasant and more easygoing. Those kind of things don't usually result in kind of safety issues. It's the upset and the agitation and the anger that may result in safety situations. So these folks are getting easily confused or upset when routines are disrupted. And, that can lead to just poor decision making, such as, storming out of the house in anger, or the combination of kind of that disorientation that we talked about and these behavior changes may result in people not recognizing who their care partners are and feeling threatened. So they might be ready to grab a knife or a pair of scissors in order to kind of protect themselves. So we can see how some safety issues may arise out of behavior changes. And then we have the physical abilities. And so what we're seeing there is some significant changes to balance, strength, and mobility. Now, for sure, some of that occurs as a part of the aging process, but for people living with dementia, there is more of that going on. And this clearly makes people at higher risk for falls. And falls are one of the big things we do worry about in people living with dementia. And another area that we see some significant change in is loss of fine motor skill. So, you know, how we use our hands. Think about what great tools our hands are and how we use them, and how our hands help us with regards to safety. So for a person with dementia that is losing some of that fine motor skill, to be able to hold securely a hot cup of coffee or tea or a bowl of soup, that could be a real problem. To be able to manage a pair of scissors or a knife properly and safely could be a problem. Even such a thing as, getting a pot of soup and getting it poured into a bowl, or getting the bowl out of the microwave. For many people, the microwave might be, in many houses that I have been, it's mounted up, it's not on the counter. So you have to reach into the microwave to pull it out. And if you don't have that good fine motor control, whatever it is that's in there could be very hot, could be landing really almost literally on your face and down your neck and the front of you. So those physical abilities are things we really need to pay attention to as well. And then we're going to talk about the senses. So we do see these changes in the senses, and in particular with people with dementia, changes to the visual field and to depth perception. So the visual field is getting smaller and narrower, and the ability to perceive depth is being impaired. So when you think about that, if all this information that's in our peripheral vision is information a person is no longer receiving, because, and it's not that they can't see, it's that the brain isn't processing that information that the eye is seeing. So that information is missing, and now the depth perception information is skewed. It's not working well. So what does that mean? Well, again, that's adding another risk for falls, for sure. But additionally, with changes to the visual field and depth perception, there's changes in hearing, in smelling, in taste, and all of these different things. You think about how much of that information is assisting us with safety. So my nose tells me if something's burning on the stove, or if I burnt toast, but my nose will also tell me if that's not toast burning, that's something else going on, and now I'm concerned there might be a fire in the house. Or I hear some kind of alarm going, and I'm able to determine, my brain helps me to determine that that alarm is the smoke detector, and that's the noise it makes when the battery has run out, it needs a new battery, it chirps. And or that other alarm that I hear is actually maybe a fire truck that's coming, or an ambulance that's coming around in my neighborhood. So we're able to kind of assess the situation as regards to safety with those senses. And the same thing with taste as well too, and smell. Just thinking about, if food has gone bad. I mean, sometimes we know that it's starting to go over just by the way it smells. And so we'd stop ourselves actually from tasting it. So we rely on our senses to do a lot of that information gathering for us as we are moving through life in a day-to-day activities and making decisions as to whether what we are about to do, or the decision we're about to make, or the step we're about to take, is it safe to do so? And a lot of this is not really conscious thought. It's part of what our wonderful brains do very well. And so it's important for all of us as care partners to be thinking about that with regards to our person with dementia, and thinking a little bit more about not just the kind of broad and kind of apparent safety issues, but some of the more minutia of safety. So we're going to stop for a minute and do some questions. And I hope all our Zoom gremlins have left the building.
I apologize. Apparently that's a gremlin acting only on my end. So sorry to interrupt, Eugene. I think we're all set.
That's totally fine. So Gabby, do we have any questions or anything from folks regarding some of these symptoms we've just talked about and how they impact safety?
Yeah, we just had one general question, noting that someone with memory loss was repeating the same question day after day. So I guess how would that be related safety-wise? Repeating the same question over and over?
Well, I would say a couple of different things. Is first of all, that's the rapid forgetting that we were talking about. You know, the person with dementia is not asking questions over and over again to annoy or irritate or cause upset. It's because they don't remember. And so I think just to translate that to a safe, to awareness of safety with that person, that if, I don't know, if you had, for example, you were cleaning in the kitchen and had some kind of cleaning product out that, you obviously you wouldn't want your person to ingest. I'm just trying to think, I guess some of the cleaner I use in my sink, it's actually clear. And so it might, if I don't do this, but if I were to put a little bit of it in, let's say, a glass, because I'm going to use it to scrub a particular area, it might be perceived as being a glass of water. And a person with dementia, because of the changes in senses and because of the rapid forgetting, might not identify it as being a dangerous thing. And even if we've said, no, honey, stay away from that, that's the cleaner for the sink, they may forget that and still maybe, go towards the drink. So as if to rather to drink it. So I think, I think that rapid forgetting is in some ways can be a reminder to all care partners that the person with dementia will forget. If you say, don't go in the kitchen, I just washed the floor and it's slippery. 2 minutes later, that instruction may be forgotten and maybe the person slips and falls. So we just have to keep that in the forefront of our minds. Amy, would you add to that?
Yeah, I agree on all of those fronts. I would say two things. One, yes, saying or stating or asking the same thing over and over again, while it in and of itself might not be an obvious safety concern, it is indicative of the person's impairment and their likelihood of forgetting other important safety information. So I totally agree with that. I would also just say, I know this is a really frustrating symptom. This is something that really exhausts a lot of care partners. And I'm here to say that if you are a care partner who is exhausted by answering the same questions over and over again, going through these same repetitive conversations over and over again, it's normal to be exhausted by that, and it means you need some support, because a care partner who is exhausted and sort of at their limit is also a safety concern for a person who's living with dementia, right? You might be too tired to be paying attention to all the things that need to be paid attention to. So I would consider that an indication, sort of a little bit of a red flag reminder that it's time for both of you to get some more support. Okay. Okay, well, I think I'll keep us moving along on our agenda here, and we'll start getting into some of the how-to and what you can do to try to keep yourself as safe as possible if you are a person living with dementia who's planning ahead for the future, or if you are caring for someone else. So let's get into this next section here. First, just a couple of kind of key concepts. Prevention, by definition, it's controlling what we can control, right? There is nothing we can do at this moment to prevent the onset of Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementia. There aren't forms of treatment that halt the progression of this disease, or even at this point really slow it down. We're close, but we're not there yet. So when it comes to safety, we focus on what we can control, prevention around the home environment. We really just have to think ahead. Staying one step ahead of where the person is right now is really important when it comes to safety planning. So there's prevention, getting stuff out of the way, making accommodations or changes around the house. But there's also some of those things can be difficult, time consuming, expensive, or sort of beyond what you're really able to do. So also, we're going to be talking about ways to adapt the environment. You might not be able to, tear down walls and make the bathroom bigger to accommodate a different kind of tub, for example. But are there some adaptations that you can make, adjusting the environment, adjusting the way things are set up, the way lighting is set up in a room, for example, rather than full preventative intervention, modifying the house? Are there little tweaks that we can make? An important thing for us to keep in mind when it comes to supporting someone who's living with dementia, and this is true whether or not we're talking about supporting somebody living in a private home, in their own home, or living in a communal sort of residential care setting. What we're working toward here is not making somebody as independent as possible. That's not really a safe proposition when we're talking about somebody who's living with a progressive condition like Alzheimer's disease or dementia. But what we can do is maximize the amount of autonomy that they have in their day-to-day life, right? Make the environment safe for them to navigate, as safe as we can to navigate, keeping in mind that we can't wrap people with dementia in bubble wrap and make sure that nothing ever happens to them. Right? Risk is absolutely a part of life for all of us, with and without dementia. So it's really important that we focus on minimizing harm, doing what we can to control the environment, while also recognizing that people need to have freedom of movement and autonomy. In the field of social work, we call that the dignity of risk. Right? There is some risk that is just unfortunately an unavoidable part of life. So here's one of the most common questions that we receive in our education programs, but also through our clinical services department. Just people really struggling to understand where they are on this continuum. When a person is in the very early stages of mild cognitive impairment or very early Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, most people are safe to live alone, or to, if they don't live alone, they have somebody who lives with them, to be left alone for long stretches of time. It's not an unsafe proposition when a person's symptoms are mild, and it can be hard for people to sort of figure out, where are we? Is the person currently safe to be living alone or to be left alone for long periods of time? So these are the questions we would ask you to to think about in considering whether or not you or the person you care for are safe alone? Would they know when and how to get help? This is the primary, the key question. If you're a care partner and something happened to you, you fell, you lost consciousness, you were having some kind of a medical emergency, would the person who's living with dementia that you care for, would they recognize that something is wrong? And would they know how to call for help? Would they be able to use the tools to call 911, for example? And would they be able to wait safely for help to arrive? Would they be able to be a good advocate for you, right? To tell the first responder what happened? If you're caring for somebody whose short-term memory or orientation or level of confusion would not make it possible for them to do this reliably, this is not a person who is safe to be living alone. It is not a person who is safe to be alone for long periods of time. Think back to that burning toast that Jean was talking about. You want to be sure that the person is in the stage of their disease process where smelling that toast tells them that's just toast. Oh, I forgot the toast. Let me go get it. Where they're not in a place where what they're actually smelling is a fire, right? And they don't have the sensory perceptive abilities to recognize that and to respond appropriately. If a person has ever wandered, unfortunately, we're going to talk more about wandering as we go along, but if they've ever gotten lost in a moment of disorientation or confusion, they are very exceptionally high risk of that happening again. Unfortunately, it doesn't usually just happen once. So if that's ever happened, this is sort of, for a lot of people, a marker that it is time to bring in more support and not have this person being home alone for long periods of time. And generally, just if there's a history of them being alone for an extended period of time and them having some problems, right? They've been alone and you come in after a few days and you find the medications are spilled all over the floor. If they are, there's old food in the fridge because they're not able to sort of tell what's safe, what's not. If there's a history of problems, unfortunately, again, these are progressive conditions. We shouldn't expect for them to get better. This is an indication that the person is in need of more support. So the bottom line here, people living with dementia will eventually require 24/7 supervision. We just have to plan for that day. It may not arrive, right? They may have more support. The circumstances of their life may change. Maybe we find an effective form of treatment that halts these symptoms or slows them down. But we really want people to have a realistic picture of what you can reasonably expect with these conditions. We really want you to be thinking ahead, planning ahead for a day that you or the person that you care for are going to require 24/7 supervision. It is at this time, unfortunately, an inevitable sort of phase of the disease. So we do encourage you, have a safety net, right? If you're a care partner, the person you're taking care of needs a safety net and you need one too. Be thinking now about who you can have sort of on speed dial in your back pocket to call in on a moment's notice. If you got sick, if you got injured and needed emergency room care, for example, you got called away for some reason. Is there some reason, if there were some reason, is there someone who can come in and help you and be part of your support system? With that, I'll turn things back over to Jean.
Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind advancing slides for me, Amy. My clicker just doesn't want to work today. So we're going to talk more specifically about safety considerations, and these are the topics that we'll touch on. And what I want to let you know is we'll focus on a couple of areas, but we do have webinars, classes that are devoted to some of these topics that allow us to then go more deeply into the challenges of managing these safety considerations. And so one of the ones that we do is a class on driving and memory loss. I think everybody can appreciate the challenges of that, both as a safety issue and a public safety issue, but also that, it's kind of an easier said than done thing to get somebody living with dementia to agreeably give up the car keys or give up driving. That might not happen just the way we might like it to. And similar issues can arise with firearm safety. And then, additionally, of course, the areas we've referred to already: fall prevention, avoiding injuries, physical injuries, and most certainly medication errors. We had just a few weeks ago a caregiver skills class on medications, where a geriatric pharmacist came in and co-presented with Amy, and talking about different tips and techniques to manage some, better manage the potential for medication errors, in addition to other information. That is actually in our webinar library, so you can have a look at that particular class. There's abuse prevention as well too, that needs to be talked about, and Amy will get into that in a little bit here. And then another big area is wandering, which I'm going to talk about. And then lastly, as Amy has referenced as well, caregiver stress, because if you don't have the energy, if you don't have the bandwidth and the capacity to be able to kind of look at these things and assess and take the steps to, make an environment more secure, or to do things in a different manner, then that's a safety issue for the household, the situation, the person living with dementia. And, there's safety issues then for the caregiver as well too. So caregiver stress is something that we take very seriously at Alzheimer's San Diego. It's an important topic to us. And if you don't know what to do, you're feeling that stress and that overwhelmed sense, then you don't know what to do with it, please do contact us and we'll talk more about it. So let's get into things a little bit. Let's talk about fall prevention. And, the very obvious thing is make sure there's adequate lighting, which means really not just adequate lighting, but lots of lighting. And one of the suggestions that is made is to have some track lighting that is down low. So kind of like under the edge of counters, like in the kitchen, so that the floor is really visible. And you can get that track lighting in other areas of the house as well too, maybe in the bathroom, underneath the lip of the cabinet in the bathroom. And I want you all to be thinking, I myself have been experiencing, this is the time of year where it gets dark, very dark, early. And think about how dark our houses get. And our people living with dementia, again, to remind yourself, they have that narrowed visual field and those changes in depth perception, the ability to properly perceive depth. So we need to give them as much lighting as possible so that they can move around freely. We need to get rid of obstacles and clutter. And most certainly, what I'll say in our house, some of that challenge is shoes. So people come in the front door or come in through the garage, and shoes tend to get left around the front door and around in the garage by the door that comes into the house. So those are gathering spots for shoes, which is pretty common. But I myself have tripped over those shoes more than a few times. And so, that's something that you might think, oh, well, shoes by the door, that's just really normal. But think about those things that people living with dementia might not see. Again, keep that in mind about the visual field. So the other thing that it might be is magazines or papers, it might be dog toys, it might be power cords, especially at this time of year, if you put up holiday decorations inside with lights, or for that matter, outside, and there's some power cords out along or across the front sidewalk. These are obstacles that can cause a fall. think about some of the things that you can, modifications you can make to your home to helps people be more steady in areas where the risk of a fall is higher. So if you have stairs in the home, there's often a rail on the one side, but think maybe, do you need to have a rail installed on the other side? If this is a wall here on my left and the railing is here on my right, that's terrific. But maybe we need a rail installed here on the left on the wall, so that the person living with dementia maybe has two rails, one on either side, to hang on to. Think about grab bars that you can put in, most certainly in bathrooms and most certainly in showers and bathtubs. And those can be easily done. Amy will talk about community resources later on. There are a variety of resources you can go to. They'll come out and they'll install those grab bars for you. And then think about the floor coverings you have around the home. And throw rugs are really not a good thing at all for people living with dementia. Again, remember that change in the vision. And area rugs are really not great either. These are all just opportunities for people to catch their toe on the lip of the rug, or their shoe or slipper on the lip of that rug. And so to have floors that are free of rugs really is a good thing. So with regards to, I mentioned slippers or shoes, good footwear is an absolute must for people living with dementia, and really for all of us, just as we are getting older. And that includes the footwear that we wear in the home. And there are lots of slippers out there that are really, maybe they shouldn't be out there. Maybe they shouldn't be in the stores because they increase our risk for falls. And some of the ones I'm referring very specifically to are the ones that are slip-ons that just cover the toes. So we slide our foot in and then, you know, our heel is free and kind of moves up and down as we move around the house. They aren't secured to our feet very well, and they up our risk for falls if we're wearing those types of slippers. So do a little bit of research when you're looking at slippers that are safety conscious slippers for people that are older, people with diminished visual functioning, and then of course people who are living with dementia. And you can give us a call at Alzheimer San Diego and we can give you a little bit more guidance on that too. It's important to maintain strength, flexibility, and balance. And so, you know, there's specific exercises that you can be doing with your person living with dementia that help with that. And what I would suggest there is, you know, to talk with a physical therapist about what some of those exercises might be, and see if you can incorporate those into some of your daily activities. There are programs very much focused on fall prevention, and Amy will talk a little bit more about some of those things as well too, as community resources. So let's go on to the next slide. Other household injuries. So it is important in the kitchen to do kind of a walkthrough and limit the access to, or adapt the access to, appliances that might be problematic in terms of safety, to sharp objects, to tools, to equipment. So what are we talking about? Knives, scissors, think about microwaves, stovetops, ovens. You may want to secure or adapt them by using different kind of locks. And you can get some of these devices at places like Home Depot and Lowe's and off of Amazon as well too. It might be a safety cover for the stovetop, or some of those auto shutoffs that you can get so that, you know, the gas to the stove and the oven is not able to be turned on until you as the care partner, are there and turn it on. So think about those things that you might need to do. Most certainly, excuse me, disable internal door locks. And by that, I mean for bedrooms or for bathrooms, because you don't want your person living with dementia to accidentally lock, or perhaps intentionally lock, the door to the bedroom or the bathroom. They're inside that room and you can't get to them. So you want to, change out those door locks or disable them. Water temperature is another area to be aware of. So you want to have the water heater set for no higher than 120 degrees. Again, people with dementia have changes in their sensory function. So if your water heater is set at a higher temperature, person living with dementia could potentially turn on hot water till it's scalding hot and not make the connection that the steam I'm seeing is because it's scalding hot, and they may stick their hand under it, or they may have the shower on and step into it. And, because there's changes in the sensory processing of information, even how that heat feels, even if it's scalding, how it feels on the hand, there might not be a quick reaction to say, oh, that's hot, I need to remove my hand from that. So think about safe chemical storage for all those things that are the cleaners and fertilizers or pesticides, if you use those. Other first aid type things that we use, like rubbing alcohol, things like that, they really should all be stored safely and preferably in a locked, secured storage area, maybe a cupboard in the garage. You don't want to have those things too handy. It's just way too easy for a problem to occur with that. If you have a can of Lysol in the bathroom, Lysol spray, not uncommon, and you have somebody who uses hairspray too, how easy is it to get the can of Lysol and think you're spraying hairspray on your hair, and then you get Lysol in your face? No, not something we want. And food safety, just in terms of ensuring that food has not gone bad, that it's been cooked properly, but also being able to manage food impulsivity for people who may go back and eat and eat and eat, or maybe they might do that with alcohol, forgetting that they had a glass of wine already. So now they're having another glass of wine and another and another. So think about food safety as well too. And let's just have a quick look. We have a tip sheet, the home safety checklist. And this is available on our website and in the resource library that we have. We do have it available in other languages, I'm happy to say, as well. So in addition to English, we have this safety checklist available in Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. And it will be emailed out with materials, program materials for you here today. But if you do want those other languages in the tip sheet, feel free to go to our website. And I just want to direct your attention to, you see the person looks like they're going to go up a step or something, and now they're falling back, the person in the little yellow triangle. And, I want to draw your attention to the words below it. I hope you can see. And if you can't, here's what it says. It says, don't wait until there's a crisis. And that's just really super important, folks. So let's talk about medication safety just quickly here. And again, I'll reference that we had that class with the geriatric pharmacist that you may want to have a look at in the webinar library. They use one pharmacy, folks, for all the medications. And talk to the pharmacist. Let them know about, they'll know about all the prescription drugs that are being taken, but also talk to them about any over-the-counter medications that you may be thinking about for your person living with dementia, because those might have some drug interactions or side effects too. Use the pill organizers to make sure that the person living with dementia, even if you're administering those medications, is taking the right pills at the right time, and they are taking their own prescribed medications and not another person's. And don't play the pharmacist yourself by adjusting your dosages or changing them or stopping this one and starting another one. You know, we have these experts in our lives for a reason, and the doctors and the pharmacists. So trust in their professional guidance that they give us, and take your medications as directed. I'm going to turn it back over to Amy here, and she is going to talk about abuse.
Thank you, Jean. I like that advice, not to play the pharmacist at home. That's very important. So yes, unfortunately, older adult and dependent adult abuse is common in the general population, but what the data shows us is that it's about 3 times more common in people who are living with memory loss associated with dementia than it is in the general older and disabled adult population. So thinking ahead about the possibility of abuse is a deeply disturbing and unpleasant topic, but it's an important one for us to be talking about because it is very common. So I just want to lay out for you briefly the several different types of abuse that are reportable, that are concerns, in particular to people who are living with dementia. Of course, there's physical and sexual abuse. There's emotional or psychological abuse. I think most of us are pretty familiar with those first 2 categories of abuse. The next is called undue influence. This is sort of a lesser known, it's a more kind of insidious type of abuse, but it is common in people who are living with dementia. Undue influence refers to someone being sort of isolated from their support system, somebody being convinced that this one person, right, the perpetrator of this type of abuse, is the only person you can trust. I'm here for you. Everybody else is out to get you and against us. Because of those brain changes that Jean was talking about at the beginning, those things that can cause confusion, disorientation, memory lapses, people with dementia are particularly prone to this type of abuse. Because of the propensity, the likelihood of developing suspicious or paranoid thinking in moments of confusion, or not understanding people's true intentions. So undue influence is something we have to be particularly vigilant about. Neglect and abandonment, of course, are forms of abuse. Self-neglect in particular, this is sort of a subset of neglect. This is another one that is particularly prominent in people who are living with dementia, when a person is making conscious decisions not to do things that keep them healthy and safe from harm. Now, this gets very tricky, right, in trying to tease out. We're allowed to make bad decisions for ourselves, right? All adults are allowed to do that as long as we are making informed choices, right? If I choose, I'm of sound mind, I do not have dementia, and I choose to just live for the rest of my life on a diet of nothing but Oreo cookies, right? I could make that choice. That is it's not a good decision for me. It'll probably lead to major health problems, but I'm allowed to make that choice. It's a little different when I have damage in my frontal lobe due to progressive changes related to Alzheimer's disease, for example, or another type of dementia. I've got changes in my frontal lobe that make me crave sugar, and I lack the ability to discern, good, nutritious food from the Oreo cookies that are in my cabinet that I'm craving. And therefore, all I eat is that cookie. All I eat is sugar. That's a different type of question, right? Because I'm not making an informed choice. I'm following my impulses. So self-neglect is important to understand and recognize there is a line. You don't have to know what that line is. In any of these instances that I'm talking about, these examples, self-neglect, other types of abuse, You don't have to know whether or not it's actually happening. If you have a concern, you can report that to Adult Protective Services. You don't have to have proof. You don't have to have details. If you've got any suspicion that somebody is potentially at harm due to self-neglect or due to the potential, someone else's predatory actions, you can report suspected elder or dependent adult abuse yourself. You can also call us. We at Alzheimer's San Diego are what are called mandated reporters. We will make that report to Adult Protective Services. And finally, financial abuse and material exploitation. It's probably self-explanatory what this is, but just a couple of notes on that. This could be thinking back to some of those examples that Jean was giving before of the symptoms, right? If somebody comes to the door and says, well, I'm done installing the new roof, right? And here's your bill. If I'm a person living with memory loss and confusion, and I know I've got memory loss and moments of, lapses and moments of confusion, I might say to them, I don't remember doing this, but I guess I contracted with that person. I'm trying to do the right thing and I make the payment, right? There's that type of financial exploitation that people with dementia are unfortunately at higher risk of, but also scams. So scams they absolutely abound, and we are all vulnerable to them. I am not only talking about scams that are directed toward people with dementia, but unfortunately, right, the predatory types that would do this are pretty savvy at figuring out if there is somebody who's living with memory loss and does not have adequate safety support in their home. They know that this person is particularly a target. So, there's phishing scams, investment scams, right? Annuities and types of things that are actually, not above board. There are many that are perfectly above board, but charitable and donation scams, right? If an individual person thinks they're receiving a solicitation from a nonprofit whose mission they support, instead is actually donating, not donating, they're giving money to a scammer. Counterfeit scams, relationship scams. I think we've heard of the grandparent scam happening more and more often, where somebody's calling and pretending to be your grandchild who's, in jail or in some other situation and they need money to get out, right? Lots of possibilities here. So some tips for preventing scams, blocking robocalls on phones or landlines as best you can, redirecting unsolicited mail. Mail may need to go somewhere else, right, to someone else and then get delivered to the person who's living with dementia after it's been sorted out, right? We've gotten rid of all of these charitable solicitations, things that look like sweepstakes or other types of scammy things, and just give the person the real mail that they need to deal with. Fact checking and knowing your sources. It seems pretty intuitive. I think most of us think that we know to do this, but a couple of tips that I've heard from law enforcement recently that were very eye-opening to me. When you receive an email from somebody that you don't know, and it looks like something that you want to respond to. It's not obviously a scam. You want to respond to it, but you don't know the person. To do a simple thing like starting a new email, right? Copy their email address and type it into the to the recipient box and send a new email. This actually can help sort of cut out a lot of the flow of bad information, because if it's not a legitimate email address, it's going to bounce back to you. So fact checking, sort of really not returning calls right away. Let them leave voicemails. If they're not going to leave you a voicemail, right, then it's probably not a legitimate call. If they do leave you a voicemail, you can call back, right? And you can make that that direct call yourself. So not replying directly, lots of sort of common sense interventions, but unfortunately these folks are very tricky. So even our best common sense doesn't always protect us quite enough. Driving, this is a very tricky topic for a lot of people to navigate. We have a lot wrapped up in the issue of driving emotionally, as well as just practically in our lives. No longer driving is a big deal. We have a whole program at Alzheimer's San Diego that is devoted to the topic of driving and memory loss, helping you tease out when is it unsafe for a person with dementia to continue driving and what should you do. Our strongest advice is not just to sort of have the conversation about taking away the car keys, but instead to have a conversation about what our alternative is going to be. So we do have this other webinar program that can walk you through that. But in brief here, it's just, again, another one of those sort of unfortunate inevitabilities that we really have to talk about, think about, plan for, and be ready for, that most people with or without dementia are going to outlive their ability to drive safely. Nearly every person with dementia will reach a point in the progression of their disease where they will not be able to drive safely. So we just have to be planning ahead for it, because not driving can result in a lot of social isolation, a lot of sort of practical needs going unmet. So we do need to be thinking about it and talking about it. The doctor can be a great advocate in this regard if it's a doctor that's comfortable having these conversations. So doctors are legally mandated here in the state of California. They're mandated to make a report that eventually goes to the Department of Motor Vehicles when they make a diagnosis of dementia. That sort of happens automatically in most cases, unless there's just a mistake or an oversight. It is a law, it is a mandate, but that doesn't mean every doctor is comfortable actually sitting down and having the conversation with their patient. If you've got a good relationship with a doctor, they can be very, very helpful. The DMV can actually be very helpful. There is an ombudsman that can work with people who have questions about the loss of driving privileges. And there are a lot of resources available through the DMV for reporting somebody that you might be concerned about, for example. So again, we encourage you to research transportation alternatives and come to the conversation ready to talk about what we're going to do instead of driving, instead of just having the discussion about taking away car keys. Similarly, talking to a person about firearm safety is another one of those just very sticky, highly emotional charged areas. We understand it. We know where it comes from, and it is very tricky for people to navigate. But as with vehicles, we have to plan ahead for a time that a person, no matter how long they have handled firearms, maybe from childhood, maybe they use their firearm, it was their service weapon in the military, maybe they're retired law enforcement, for example. It may be like second nature to them to handle firearms safely, but think back to those symptoms that Jean was talking about. In a moment of confusion, not recognizing somebody who comes in the door, right? What might happen if that person has access to firearms? Well, the statistics tell us, right? This is a dangerous situation, as with cars. So we have to be planning ahead for what to do about this. But as with cars, we can't just take away people's firearms. It's their property. And the transfer of ownership laws, especially here in California, are tricky to navigate. So you can't always just say, okay, here, I'm going to just give this to the kids, right? So it's a little trickier, not quite as simple as we would like for it to be. But we do ask you to think about ways to transfer ownership, remove weapons from the home, at the very least, separate the ammunition so that it's safe. We have a program at Alzheimer's San Diego wherein we have received from a local firearm dealer a supply of cable gun locks that we can give out for free, as many as you need. Doesn't matter, no questions asked. Let us know, we can get you a supply of the cable gun lock, like the one that you see there on the screen. Just a simple, goes through the barrel, locks with a key that the care partner can keep, or it can just be kept safely somewhere. And that way you don't have to take the firearms away, but you can render them safe. So ask for help. We have information about this on our website. Local law enforcement can be very helpful too in helping you think through what your options are. But don't put off these tricky conversations just because they're hard. We certainly understand the tendency there.
Great. Thanks, Amy. I'm going to talk a little bit here about wandering, and I could actually talk a lot about this, folks, but we don't have that much time for it here today. But let me just say that many, many times over the course of my professional career, when I brought up the topic of wandering risk with families, I've often heard the reply is that, well, the person I care for has never wandered, not once. And I will say just a couple of things is remember what we looked at on the tip sheet. The words I pointed out to you is don't wait for a crisis to occur, to happen. And the other thing I would just say is the fact that a person living with dementia has not wandered to this point in time is no guarantee that they're not ever going to wander. It is, in fact, something that everyone with dementia is at risk for. And a majority of people with dementia do wander at some point in time. Wandering can occur on foot or in a vehicle. We've heard certainly reports about people who've driven to other states, and in some cases, by our location here in San Diego, have driven into Mexico as well too. So why do people wander? Well, it's that disorientation or confusion, maybe going out to go for a walk in the neighborhood or to go down to the store to pick up some milk. They've done that many, many times on their own to this point and never had a problem. And now all of a sudden they're disoriented. They don't know where they are. They're confused about where they are. And they turn left instead of right. And then the disorientation and confusion it just gets worse because now they really are off the beaten path that they normally would be driving on or walking on. I just want to reference, I don't know if any of you folks have seen this in our local news, but I have been watching and, it's tragic, but there's a lady from the Fallbrook area who has dementia, and she's been missing now 5 weeks, and they still haven't found her. And she was a person who went out for a daily walk. That's what she did. And then she disappeared. So, is that what happened with her? I don't know. We don't know. But just to be very, very aware that this is something that can happen to any person with dementia. So it might be disorientation or confusion. Sometimes, though, it's memories of past activities. I've worked with families who've had the person they're caring for maybe thinking that they're still working, and so they feel like they have to get to work. Or somebody who thinks they still have young children at home and they need to go to the school and pick them up or walk them home from school. I had some client who the person that they were caring for was good to go in their own neighborhood driving to a point in time, but one time ended up going to visit a family member that had lived close, but went to an area that the person used to live in, didn't live in now, but did live in many, many years ago, and got lost out in that area. Sometimes wandering is about physical needs or discomfort. So that they're hungry, that they're thirsty, and so they don't, are maybe not thinking, well, there's food in the fridge, or I'll just go get a glass of water. Maybe they're saying, well, I'm going to run to the store to pick up something to eat or something to drink. Or it might be just agitation or restlessness, that I'm bored, I'm lonely, this doesn't feel good here. I want to go out into the world and try and find a place that feels more satisfying, more safe, whatever it might be. So there's lots of reasons for wandering, and we need to be thinking about that. And please, people, be thinking about it in advance. Again, don't wait for it to happen. So how do you reduce risk? You limit access to vehicle and keys, for sure, to the car and the car keys to start with. So what does that look like? Well, not just limiting access, but really putting them in a secure location. So if the car keys are in a dish on a counter, which is where they are in our house, then the car keys had best not be in that dish. But further than that, even if the secondary spot for car keys might be in a purse. And so my husband might be looking through my purse to find the car keys, then that's not really a secured place for those keys either. So really making sure that they are, the person living with dementia cannot access those keys. Avoid locks for front doors for sure, because of fire safety hazard. You know, we all need to, including the people we care for, need to be able to leave the home in the event of a fire. But do consider using whatever kind of devices and items you may want to try to be able to be alerted to if a person is trying to go out the front door or the back door. So what might that be? Well, I mean, it could be alarms. You can get alarms, but not those ones that blare. The ones that just kind of chirp or just make a small kind of ring noise. You can get those at, again, places like Home Depot and Amazon and Lowe's. The other kind of the simple version of that is to get a wind chime and hang it on the back of the door, the inside of the door, front and back, so that every time the door is opened, you know, it bangs the wind chime and you hear the noise. Move items that suggest leaving. So if there's a pair of shoes and a coat and the car keys sitting right at the front door, that's kind of an invitation to go out the front door. So make sure those items are not there right at the front door. And you can, in fact, camouflage doors and doorknobs by doing things like, you know, kind of camouflaging them or disguising them. You can get some prints off of Amazon that makes the door maybe look like a bookshelf, or maybe you paint it the same color as the wall, so it kind of looks more like it might be a feature on the wall. And doorknobs can even be covered and or painted the same color as the door, so they are visually harder to identify. And then of course, watch for those unmet needs like being hungry, thirsty, needing to use the bathroom, or again, that restlessness of needing movement, needing to be busy. And so let's move ahead one and talk about, when we're talking about that kind of restless energy, you know, we're also talking about in the broad aspect of things, and we've all seen this pandemic wise, of meeting physical and social needs if we're isolated at home, which we all have been, but perhaps more so our families who are dealing with the diagnosis of dementia. So maintain as much routine as is possible. And that includes both, you know, activities within the home, as well as time outdoors. And think about kind of the tasks that can be done that are purposeful activities that give kind of allows the person to contribute to the household, to you know, the daily routines of the household. And we're not necessarily looking at what the end result is, but rather to have them engaged and, you know, physically busy. So what is that? Washing dishes, folding laundry, sweeping the patio out back, raking, you know, if there's trees in the back and they've dropped their leaves at this time of year, get them out there raking. All of these things that do have movement involved with them. They are purposeful. We're not focusing on whether all the leaves have been raked up. And look, even if the dishes aren't as clean as you would like, you can always maybe pop those in the dishwasher after your person's gone to bed later that night. But have them doing some purposeful stuff. Connect with others as you can. And, you know, I think we're getting certainly more of that at this point in time with the pandemic. But also, you know, if you have been using things like FaceTime and Zoom and you know, just phone calls and such too, to stay in touch with people, it is important that we have those outside connections. We do have some free and easy and fun at-home activity ideas for you. And you can visit our website at the /coronavirus to get some of those. And I hope you'll find those to be helpful. And then lastly, just regarding wandering response and getting home safely, think about what you can do to proactively take care of things. So you could set up a neighborhood network of support. Talk to your neighbors that you know. You could talk to neighbors you don't know. All you need to do is knock on the door and just introduce yourself and say, my person that I care for is John. He is my husband and he has dementia. And that means, his thinking is his cognition is impacted by the dementia and he may wander from home. If you see him walking down the street, here's a picture of him. If you see him, please call me at this number. Let your neighbors know so they can kind of be some eyes and ears. Keep a list of places where your person may go that they may like. Maybe they like the Starbucks that's down at the shopping center. Keep a recent and good photograph on hand, especially showing the face. There's personal GPS systems that you can look at, and we can provide you with that information at All San Diego. And then there's some terrific programs like Medic Alert, Take Me Home, and other registries, which Amy's going to talk about just briefly here. Stop and just check and see if there's questions. I'm not seeing any in the Q&A.
Okay, I didn't see any either. I wasn't sure.
We had one question about fall risks, how the use of a cane or a walker might increase a fall risk, or how it might be helpful to decrease a fall risk.
Yeah.
I'm going to say if the recommendation has been that a person uses a cane or a walker, it's intended to reduce the fall risk. And, just a quick thought on if the person is resistant to it, I think just establishing routines that the walker is right there beside the chair or right in front of the chair, and those gentle reminders. Remember, these folks have memory loss, so we want to remind them to use them. But the other thing is, we can dress them up and personalize them a little bit, particularly with walkers, to make them, maybe a woman might want to have some little fold over little purses that can hang from the walker. They can have things handy there. Or a gentleman might like something with pockets for books and glasses and phone and things like that. So personalize them a little bit.
Yeah, I'll just add one additional thought and then we'll keep moving here. But yes, walkers, canes are absolutely mobility aids as long as the person knows how to use it and remembers that they need to use it. There very well may come a time that the use of a walker or cane is something the person with dementia can't manage, either because it's not something they used before they developed dementia and their ability to learn to use this new tool is impaired, or they just might not be able to recognize anymore. When I get up, I've lost the routine, I've lost that habit. Jean's recommendation that you do something to catch their eye and let them know this is mine, that's here, that can definitely help. But we also have to be thinking ahead about a time that a person just may not be able to use it. And I will say in March, and it's a few months off, but in March of next year, we are going to be doing a skills clinic specifically on the topic of fall prevention. I'll be co-presenting that with a physical therapist from Sharp Healthcare, where we will go into the ins and outs of fall prevention and using tools like canes and walkers with people with dementia. So I hope that will be helpful. Okay. So in our final few moments here, I want to talk about the safety resources that are out there. I'm going to focus mostly on local resources, but I also want to tell you about this great website. And in our email that we send out later today with our handouts from today and the home safety checklist that Jean talked with you about, I'm also going to send you a link to this website, safetyindementia.org. It was developed by the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Colorado. It's an interactive website. It's really terrific. It is designed for, there's sort of a way of entry if you're a caregiver, or a way of entry if you're a person who's living with memory loss or dementia. And it's highly interactive and walks you through the specific scenarios related to firearm access, driving, and home safety, some of these home injuries, personal injuries that we've been talking about. So a really great resource. You can sort of see scenarios and get suggestions on how to prevent those things from happening. Let's focus on the safety resources that are available here in our backyard. For those of you who are here in San Diego County, want to make sure you know about these important collaborators of ours out in the community who can help you with a lot of these modifications and adaptations that we've been talking about. Elder Help offers free, all of these services are provided at no cost, home safety inspections and modifications. You may need, they can help sort of bring in supplies and volunteers and people to do this, but of course there may be some personal costs associated with all of these types of home modifications. So just want to say that, quick reality check there. But Elder Help can provide these home safety inspections and make minor modifications like those that Jean was describing before, the installation of grab bars, balance bars in bathrooms, new lighting, not wiring, but the installation of the equipment itself. JFS and Interfaith, these are two local nonprofits who sort of share a contract to provide a fix-it service. One handles the North County, one handles the rest of San Diego County. So home safety checks, also minor home repairs and modifications available through those organizations. There's a lot of information available on the safety page of our website. You can easily get there. Just go to alzsd.org/safety, and it will direct you to a pretty comprehensive set of resources. We've got information there about Medical Alert, the wearable identification, sort of that connects a person to a national database. So there's a number on there, an identification number, as well as a phone number. So if somebody were injured, lost, confused, unable to tell a Good Samaritan or a first responder, how to get a hold of a loved one, how to get a hold of their emergency contact, you can just call the phone number and they will get you connected to who you've listed as the appropriate emergency contact, or of course they'll connect you to emergency medical help if that's what's needed. It's a national database, and there are other such services like Medical Alert also available around the country. Take Me Home is a local program we're very proud of. It's actually won a national award that's nationally recognized as a wandering response program. It's just here in San Diego County. So this doesn't work or help you if a person becomes lost outside of this region, but within San Diego County, as long as a person is enrolled in the Take Me Home program, and again, it's free. It is operated by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. As long as they are within San Diego County, this service can help law enforcement, sheriff's search and rescue volunteers, other parties to initiate a search right away and hopefully get them back home as quickly and safely as possible. So what is required is the upload of a good close-up photograph of the person's face, a recent clear photograph, kind of passport style, and filling in some information about their medical conditions, of course, their cognitive impairment, but also some things about their life. Remember, Jean was talking about somebody wandering in a moment of confusion and going back to an old place they lived. So you'll put information like that in there. An old neighborhood they might be likely to go to, a place of work, a favorite coffee shop or church, a place of worship, for example, where so this sort of gives law enforcement or whoever's going to be initiating the search some information to work with. This is a secure database. It is operated by the Sheriff's Department so that it can go out to any law enforcement jurisdiction here within San Diego County. but it's only effective if you're already enrolled in it. So we really encourage every person who is living with memory loss to get themselves enrolled as soon as possible, or if you're caring for someone, to go ahead and get them enrolled. Every stage of the disease, no matter where the person lives, if they're here in the county, we really recommend getting enrolled in that program. So on the safety page of our website, you'll find information about driving. You'll find information about that gun lock program that I mentioned, wandering resources. People ask frequently about the use of GPS devices to respond to wandering. There are technologies out there for this. There's information on our website about that. So in a brief visual nutshell, here we are at Alzheimer's San Diego. I've received a few questions about whether or not the support services that we provide, that Jean and I have been talking about, calling and talking to one of our dementia experts, finding us a support group, attending more trainings, having some companion respite in the home or virtually. Are these services provided free of charge? And absolutely, everything we do at Alzheimer's San Diego is provided free of charge to the community that we serve. So we're very grateful to those in our community who support us and make that possible. If you have a need, please just reach out. Let us know. Gabby will, if she hasn't already, Gabby will put the link out in the chat that you can use. It's a link to a short form. Fill that out. Let us know the best way to contact you, and we'll have a member of our clinical services team reach out, tell you about a resource, help you figure out how to connect to other community resources. If there's something you need that we don't provide at Alzheimer's San Diego, we're here to help. So you can find us and lots of information on our website. You can call us, you can email us, info@alzsd.org, or you can live chat us from the homepage of our website, or go ahead and fill out that request form that is in the webinar chat. Let us know how to reach you, and a member of our team will be always happy to help. A couple of upcoming programs we want to make sure that you know about. Next week, Jean will be moderating a panel discussion with a group of family caregivers. It's called Confessions of a Caregiver. This is a regular, sort of special but regular program that we offer at Alzheimer's San Diego, not traditional education lecture style, but more of a discussion with a group of family caregivers answering your questions that you can submit. They'll directly answer. So this particular session is devoted to the topic of men's perspectives on caregiving. So all the panelists are all men, but everybody is welcome to attend that program. We also, in the education department, Jean, myself, and our colleague Nellie, we offer on a regular basis what we call drop-in education hours. We'll have another one coming up later this month on December 21st. Just an open form, no agenda, no topic, just bring questions. So maybe if you've checked out one of these webinars that we've been referring to and they bring up some questions for you, just pop on in and we'll be happy to answer questions as best we can. And then early next year, we will be doing a program called Living with Memory Loss for people who have memory loss as well as care partners. Everybody is welcome to attend that one. All those details are up on our website. So we would really appreciate your feedback on this program. When this webinar closes, you'll get directed to a short survey. It's anonymous, and we really value your feedback on the program, the topic, whether or not it was helpful to you, and also suggestions that you have for other programs that you are in need of, other types of support. Please let us know. A recording of this program, assuming the technology worked in my favor here today, a recording of this program should be available in our webinar library shortly. And again, an email will go out later this afternoon with all of these resources that we've been talking about. So Jean, I thank you very much for providing all the great information to everyone here today. Gabby, thank you for answering questions and connecting people to resources. And I know our volunteer Cora is not here anymore, but we appreciate Cora's technical support as well.
Absolutely. And thanks to you as well, Amy. So
pleasure.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. Stay warm and cozy on this rainy day.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time around.
All righty. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.